My next guest is Joshua Ray. He is an educational speaker and author who has led the Professional Learning Communities PLC at Work process at the elementary, secondary, and district level. He is passionate about building healthy school cultures, the work of collaborative teams, and systems of support, along with educator well-being. Well, welcome to the podcast, Joshua.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
Well, tell me about a time when you were in the trenches and managed to crawl out.
Yeah, so that's a huge premise behind the book that we're highlighting today. I became a leader. Had spent a whole year as an assistant principal, and my district decided that would make me worthy of being an elementary principal. I was a secondary guy my whole life, and so I found myself at an elementary level, not having any idea what anyone was talking about, and trying honestly to outwork my inadequacies. And so I was getting there before anyone else, staying later, working through the night, just constantly pushing myself to the limit. I wasn't thinking about the fact that I wasn't sleeping. I
Mhm.
was missing lunch every day, propped up on caffeine. And so on parent-teacher conferences of my second year to be an elementary principal, I came to on the floor of my office, and my assistant principal was trying to roll me over. I was suffocating on my tie in the midst of a grand mal seizure, and had never experienced anything like that prior to that event. And so I recognized that something had to give, and that at the
Mhm.
time, the thing that was giving was myself physically, and
Mhm.
so I recognized how much of the psychology behind my imposter syndrome, my fear that I wasn't enough to be a leader and that I wasn't good enough to do the job that I had. I realized how much it was pushing me into some really unhealthy habits, and started studying other leaders, and developed a passion for helping make sure that leaders weren't pushing themselves to the brink the way that I was. And I
Mhm.
found the more that I talked to people that my story wasn't unique. And so I'm very passionate and very motivated by the preservation of all educators. But
Mhm.
I feel especially that leaders sometimes don't have a whole lot of voices speaking on their behalf, and that they feel
Mhm.
like they have to be the toughest person in the room, that they can't show any sign of weakness, and that sometimes that comes at the cost of the most basic things that it takes to be a healthy human being.
Yeah. Yeah, you talk about this in your book, Finding Your Balance. And I remember reading about that. Talk to me a little bit about what happened after you'd had this health experience and how you started changing and what you learned also in the process of writing the book about how you can reach out to other leaders who might be living the unhealthy habits.
Yeah, yeah. So the first thing that I guess my first concern was this must be a me problem, right?
Hmm.
That I thought this must just be a Josh thing. And then
Yeah.
I started talking to other people and recognized that there were other people that were struggling with it. And so a big premise behind the book, something that kind of pushed me into writing the book, was that I studied practicing leaders across my state and found that we were a hot mess, that
Hmm.
everybody was struggling. And so for me, it just became about the small things, about recognizing what mattered most to me, and for me, that's time with my family. That's time to just disconnect and to be whole, and trying to protect those things, to make those things sacred. And so the premise of the book is not meant to be judgmental, to
Hmm.
be heavy-handed, or to look down on administrators. In fact, it's meant to kind of be the person looking eye to eye with them in the pit, and to say,
Hmm.
hey, it can be lonely, it can be really hard, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be sleeping. So how can
Hmm.
we help you sleep a little bit better? How can we help you prioritize time with your loved ones? And then ultimately, the back half of the book is on how leaders can be the best version of themselves on the job. I
Hmm.
think we have to preserve the human being, but then on the other side, recognize that being efficient and effective, those are great qualities of any leader. And so
Hmm.
when we can find out what makes us special, what makes us successful in our job, and really lean into those things, it helps us to have purpose and meaning in our work, but
Hmm.
also to be the best version of ourselves for the schools that we lead.
Hmm. Hmm. And you also did a study around when you said you were looking at some of these habits of principles. Um, Talk to me a little bit about um, how much in depth you went into the study when it was conducted and if that would apply now because the study was pre-pandemic.
Yeah, yeah. So it was in 2018 that I
Hmm.
did the study. Studied just over 500 administrators that were practicing administrators in my home state of Arkansas.
Uh-huh.
At the time, found that leaders were missing 3 meals a week. They were averaging less than a healthy amount of sleep. They were
Hmm.
working almost 15 hours more a week than the normal American. That they were essentially exhausted, hungry, dehydrated,
Hmm.
and missing out on some major things that mattered most to them as human beings. And so I think that the question that caused me to really wrestle with is why? I mean,
Hmm.
educational leaders are typically put in their position because they were successful as teachers. They're highly educated, they're successful
Hmm.
people, and so what causes them to get to that point? And to answer your question, I would say, as I've studied leaders over time and worked with leaders across the country, so that work in 2018 was kind of the jumping off point for me of making
Hmm.
lots of connections. And in that time, I've found that if anything, things have gotten worse. That
Yeah.
that leaders feel more and more that they have to be the answer to every question, that they have to push themselves to be all things to all people.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, each of us has gifts and weaknesses, and that's okay. That
Yeah.
we can know who we are as people and find people that make us better and let combined leadership offer the things to those that we lead that we could never offer on our own.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's often the case. Like there are leaders, especially newer leaders, that have the best intention of distributive leadership. It doesn't always go that way. And sometimes, yeah, they're thinking they need to be everything to everybody. So what would you advise new leaders who are trying and have that vision of distributive leadership, but maybe don't have the emotional intelligence quite yet to kind of work in those teams so they then don't feel like they're responsible for everything.
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of the sequence of the book. I
Yeah.
think what I would tell those new leaders first and foremost is you can't be a great leader unless you're a whole human being. So
Yeah.
first off, how do you protect yourself? Not to say
Mhm.
that the job's not going to be hard, there's not going to be long days, but how do
Mhm.
you make sure that you're not bringing to your school some afterthought of who you are physically, emotionally, and
Mhm.
personally? And then from there, I think that one of the things that we miss out in leadership is that we forget why we got the job in the first place. That most of us have skills that we bring to the table, but the job of educational leader is multifaceted.
Mhm.
So what ends up happening is more often than not, we see the things that we're not and forget the things that we are. And so when we know what makes us uniquely gifted, that gives us a jumping off point
Mhm.
in who we collect from a skill set perspective. So
Mhm.
for me, I was an elementary principal that knew nothing about elementary school, but I knew how to connect people. I knew how to bring the best out in people. And when I
Mhm.
took the time to recognize that I could be that, then
Mhm.
I could start to find who are the people that have the instructional knowledge that I don't. And I think one of the things that was the most freeing for me is when we find people that have skills that we don't and we allow them to be successful in those areas,
Mhm.
it's one of the most rewarding experiences that a leader can have. That those
Mhm.
people are successful on a different level, and we get the joy of knowing that we saw something in someone else that they may have never realized otherwise. So, I think to answer your question, it starts with being whole,
Mhm.
then knowing who we are and protecting that. But then when we know who we are, we know who we aren't, and
Mhm.
looking for the people that are the things that we could never be as well as they are,
Mhm.
and amplifying those people so that our leadership becomes more an extension of all of these people that are winning for our school than what we're constantly trying to overcome or work to build within ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that's ultimately the way to go because that way you have those pockets of talent, right? That everyone is be able to really work to their best ability in what they're talented in, as opposed to the leader only trying to do things that they might not have as much experience in. So, yeah, I think that's definitely something that people can be thinking of, picking up your book and reading more about in terms of finding the balance and also the balance on your leadership team. Talk to me a little bit about your work after being a principal. So you've also worked as an assistant superintendent and now you're consulting for Solution Tree.
Yeah. So I was a middle school assistant principal, elementary principal, high school principal. Then one of my favorite jobs was as an assistant superintendent. And I think what was so special to me about that was that I got to work shoulder to shoulder with leaders that were experiencing the same things that I was, and I
Hmm.
gave them the freedom and the confidence to say, "Hey, you're not perfect, and it's
Hmm.
okay. We want you anyway. Be who you are."
Hmm.
And so that job was really special to me, more so than anything because of the people I got to work with and the people that I got to empower and support through that process. And so now what I do, I work with schools. Gosh, at this point, I think I'm at almost 45 states and four or five different countries, and
Hmm.
go work with teachers and with leaders and trying to help them do some of the things that I advocate for in the book. How can we be the best version of ourselves while being
Hmm.
efficient and helping kids in the process? And I think there are systems and ways to do that from the teacher perspective. But I think what drove me to write this book is as I go to so many schools across the country and honestly across the world, I see these collaborative systems that, the PLC idea that
Hmm.
that Rick DeFore and Bob Aker and Becky DeFore
Hmm.
championed so many years ago. That's something that's permeated public education.
Hmm.
But for some reason, leaders feel like they're immune to that. So that we have
Yeah.
these collaborative cultures in our schools, but I have to be like Atlas with the weight of the whole school on my
Hmm.
shoulders. And so helping leaders to recognize that collaboration isn't just for teachers, it's for all
Yeah.
professionals that are trying to help kids is something that means a lot to me.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely something good to point out because I often feel like that is, that's a vision, a mission of a school is to incorporate effective PLC work, right? But then a lot of the time it's something the principal says but is not involved in.
That's
So,
right. And,
yeah.
and we send a whole lot stronger message about what we do than what we say. And so
Hmm.
it's one thing to say, hey, you should collaborate, and then to go to my office, close the door, and work till 9 o'clock at night trying to
Hmm.
solve everything on my own. And listen, I think part of the reason I'm so passionate about that is I was the world's worst, right? Like
Yeah.
I was the one trying to do that myself. And so I see that in other people. And at the end of the day, I have this fundamental belief that it takes a certain character of a human
Hmm.
being to become an educator, that you don't fall into education, that people choose this profession because of their heart, their passion, their desire to help kids, and their willingness to not make enough money, to not be
Hmm.
recognized, the way they should. And so I think that you can assume a really wholesome, powerful thing about most educators. And if that's the truth, and I believe that it is, then finding ways to preserve the people in this field to be their best for the kids that they're willing to give of themselves for is not just worthy. I think it's critical. I think it's how we help schools be their best that in a way that we can ultimately help kids be successful too.
Hmm. Talk to me a little bit about your move from building principal to district office. And since you had really established these good teams at the school level, did you incorporate some of those same skills or experiences in your work at the district office?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me going to the district office was that I had gone through some of these identity crises that
Hmm.
I had struggled with as a principal. And by the time I went to the district office, I knew who I was and I knew
Yeah.
who I wasn't. And so I was very intentional to see that in other people and to go to them and say, hey, you're not great at that. And
Yeah.
that's okay. You are great at this, this, and this.
Hmm.
And hey, did you notice this person over here who can help you? Let's
Hmm.
pull them in and let them be great too. And so I think that part of the reason I love that job so much was it gave me a chance to almost, for lack of a better word, to be a missionary for the
Yeah.
people that were in the shoes that I had just been in, that I could have direct impact in protecting these people at the helms of schools. And I it's hard for me to speak of that job without a smile on my face because of the relationships I had with the leaders that I worked with. And it goes back to what I said earlier. Each of them, to a person,
Hmm.
were huge-hearted, caring people that would do anything to be successful for their kids. And I personally can't think of a better job than getting to surround yourself with people like that.
Hmm. Hmm. So you have talked a lot about different work that you do around PLC. So how did you get involved in working with Solution Tree and really doing these trainings? And this was this something you did when you were still working in the school district?
Yeah, it was. When I became an elementary principal, I had a leader in our district that said, "Hey, you should go to this conference and learn some more about the PLC process." And so we applied for a grant in our school to get some support. And I met a man by the name of Jonathan Vanderels, who
Mhm.
he and I have co-authored another book together. And I'll tell you that Jonathan quickly became more than a friend and closer to a brother as we worked together. And so through the support that he gave me as a leader, and more than anything, the hard work and the
Mhm.
success of the teachers in our school, we developed this collaborative system that took our campus from a B campus that was doing okay to
Mhm.
one the second highest performing school in our state, one of the highest schools for growth and a champion for what was possible for kids. And I think at that point, the PLC process wasn't an idea for me. It wasn't a
Mhm.
book or a conference. It was something that I had lived and the good, bad, and ugly, right? Like I had
Mhm.
felt the mistakes that I had made, the things that I didn't quite understand or that I had maybe miscommunicated. But I also saw what I think the original authors of this work intended, that when
Mhm.
you bring a group of people together that are focused on the right things, you can accomplish amazing things for kids.
Mhm.
And so when our school started to have some success, Solution Tree reached out to me and said, "Hey, is this something you'd be interested in doing?" And I found myself we're talking about this book.
Mhm.
I found myself kind of in a place of imposter syndrome all
Yeah.
over again. I'd be
Mhm.
lying if I didn't say I feel that daily, but I have the chance now to go out and work with schools through this place of transparency and honesty
Mhm.
and say, "Hey, let me tell you some things that worked really well for us. Let me tell you some things not to do." And
Mhm.
then work shoulder to shoulder with them on behalf of helping more kids. So getting the chance to do that work, that was something I did when I was still a practitioner. I started as an
Mhm.
elementary principal and a high school principal, and get to do that now full time. And I just can't imagine a better job, honestly.
Mhm. Mhm. Really going around and sharing your experience and helping schools succeed in the way you had done as well. So yeah, it's really kind of coming full circle, like you said.
Yes, ma'am. Exactly.
So we've had a great conversation around your book, Finding Your Balance, and around your work as an administrator, your trench story, finding out how to take care of yourself after having this health crisis, really around just not living healthy and doing everything as a principal. Out of everything we talked about today, what's one thing you'd like listeners to remember?
So it might be a little jarring, but one of the best things that I learned
Mhm.
was I wasn't enough. That no matter how hard I worked, I would never be able to be an answer to all the problems. And
Mhm.
I think that's applicable to leaders, but I also think it's applicable to every classroom teacher who holds the lives of 25 young men and women in their hands. That the whole premise behind the PLC process, behind collaboration, is that we are stronger than I. And
Mhm.
if we come to the point where we recognize each of us has unique gifts, unique skills, but that there's only so much we have to give,
Mhm.
then it makes collaboration less of an educational buzzword
Yeah.
and more of a strengthening, empowering way that I can be the best version of myself for kids. And so I think for anyone who's listening to this podcast, my encouragement would be you're not enough. And not only is that okay, it's one of the best things I ever learned as an educator. So go find who makes you better and be great on behalf of the kids that you serve.
Well, where can people connect with you and find you online?
I do my best to be very good on social media. My wife helps me a lot. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, and X. On X, I'm Josh Ray 711. On Instagram, I'm J Ray Consulting, or Josh Ray on Instagram, and then Josh Ray on LinkedIn. And I like to put things out to support people, and am always trying to keep the conversation going about how we can keep people thriving and succeeding on behalf of students.
Great. I'll make sure I put those in the show notes. Well, thank you so much for being my guest on the Out of the Trenches podcast today. It was a pleasure having you on, and hope people go out and reach out to you, buy your book via the Solution Tree website or Amazon, and also maybe have you come in for some PLC at Work training.
Thanks so much. I'm honored to be here. Thanks for the chance to amplify this work that I believe in so much.